For centuries, the Ottoman harem has been shrouded in mystery and misconception. Western imagination painted it as a fantastical place filled with languid odalisques dedicated to the Sultan's desires. These images depicted debauchery and the subjugation of women. They suggested women were invisible, confined to gilded cages. This portrayal is a dramatic oversimplification. The reality was vastly different. It was a sophisticated and highly organized institution. It served as the private quarters of the Sultan and his extended family. Women lived, were educated, and managed household affairs. The harem symbolized the Sultan's wealth and status. Understanding this distinction is crucial. Many women wielded considerable influence and authority. They were often educated, engaged in political maneuvering, and played crucial roles in the empire. The imperial harem, most famously located within the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, was an extensive complex of rooms, courtyards, and corridors. It was a self-contained world, meticulously organized to house and support the Sultan's family and household. This was not just a random collection of chambers. Its architecture reflected the strict hierarchy and the functions it served. There were private apartments for the Sultan, the Valide Sultan, the Sultan's consorts, and his children. Additionally, there were dormitories for the concubines, schools, kitchens, baths, a hospital, and quarters for the eunuchs who guarded and administered the harem. Life within these walls was governed by detailed protocols and routines. The inhabitants of the harem were diverse, often of non-Turkic and non-Muslim origin. These women usually entered the harem through the slave concubinage system, captured in war or purchased. However, their status could change dramatically. If a concubine caught the Sultan's attention and bore him a son, her standing would rise significantly, potentially leading to great power and influence. The harem system, reflecting the empire's vastness, included women from various ethnic and religious backgrounds who were then educated in Ottoman culture and Islamic practices. This diversity contributed to the rich cultural tapestry within its confines. Daily life in the harem was structured and regimented, yet it was also a place of education and personal development for many of its residents. The most powerful woman within the Ottoman harem, and often one of the most influential figures in the entire empire, was the Valide Sultan. This title was bestowed upon the mother of the reigning Sultan. Her position was unique, granting her immense authority, prestige, and resources. The Valide Sultan was not merely a passive maternal figure. She was an active political player, a manager of vast estates, and a cultural patron. Her influence often extended deep into the affairs of state, as she was typically one of the Sultan's closest and most trusted advisors. The Valide Sultan commanded her own extensive household and staff within the harem, reflecting her high status. She had her own apartments, often lavishly decorated, and controlled substantial financial resources through her personal income and endowments. This economic independence allowed her to fund charitable projects such as mosques, hospitals, and fountains, which enhanced her public image and influence. In the political arena, the Valide Sultan's influence could be profound. While the Valide Sultan held the paramount position, she was not the only woman of consequence within the Ottoman harem. The Haseki Sultan, a title often given to the chief consort or favorite of the reigning sultan, could also wield significant power and influence. This position became particularly prominent starting with Hürrem Sultan, the wife of Suleiman the Magnificent. Beyond the royal consorts, senior women known as kalfas and ustas played vital roles in the daily management and functioning of the harem. Kalfas were experienced and high-ranking female attendants or supervisors responsible for training and overseeing the younger women and concubines. Ustas were skilled mistresses in various arts and crafts, responsible for the education and cultural development of the harem's inhabitants. These women were not merely servants. They were respected figures who maintained order, discipline, and the transmission of knowledge within the harem. Their administrative skills were essential for the smooth operation of such a large and complex household. The Ottoman harem, often perceived as a place of mere domesticity and seclusion, was in reality a significant center of political power and intrigue. Women within its walls, particularly those in close proximity to the Sultan, could exert considerable influence over his decisions and, by extension, the affairs of the empire. This influence was not always direct or formally acknowledged, but it was potent nonetheless. One of the most critical areas of harem influence was succession politics. In the Ottoman system, there was no strict rule of primogeniture, meaning any son of the Sultan could potentially inherit the throne. This led to intense competition among the mothers of princes, each vying to secure her son's future. These women, often in alliance with powerful viziers or military leaders, engaged in sophisticated political maneuvering, building networks of support and working to undermine rivals. The harem thus became a crucial battleground where the future leadership of the empire was often decided long before a sultan's death. Contrary to the myth of the harem as a place of ignorance and isolation, it was often a vibrant center of education and cultural activity. Women, particularly those destined for service to the imperial family or as potential consorts, received a comprehensive education. This was not limited to domestic skills, but extended to various intellectual and artistic pursuits. They were taught to read and write, often in multiple languages, including Ottoman Turkish, Persian, and Arabic. They studied Islamic theology, law, and history, alongside literature, poetry, music, and calligraphy. The harem itself was a patron of arts and culture. Many women, especially Valide sultans and Haseki sultans, were known for their literary talents, composing poetry or engaging in scholarly correspondence. They also commissioned musical compositions and supported musicians and performers within the palace. The refined atmosphere encouraged artistic expression, and skills such as embroidery, weaving, and playing musical instruments were highly valued. This internal cultural richness provided an intellectually stimulating environment for many of its inhabitants, far removed from the stereotype of idle languor. Among the powerful women of the Ottoman harem, Hürrem Sultan stands out. Originally a concubine, she captivated Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. She became his legal wife, breaking Ottoman tradition. Hürrem advised Suleiman, engaged in diplomacy, and commissioned public works. She secured the succession for her son, Selim II. Hürrem's rise marked the Sultanate of Women era. Another towering figure was Kösem Sultan. She influenced 6 sultans, first as Haseki Sultan, then as Valide Sultan, and finally as Büyük Valide Sultan. Kösem managed the empire during crises and minority rule. She governed as regent, making critical state decisions. While the imperial harem was a unique institution, it is important to understand that the lives of its inhabitants were not representative of all Ottoman women. Across the vast empire, women from different social strata experienced varying degrees of freedom and played diverse roles in society. Contrary to the stereotype of universal seclusion, many Ottoman women were visible and active in public spaces. They went shopping in bustling bazaars, visited public baths, attended religious ceremonies, and even engaged in leisure activities. Their presence was a normal part of urban and rural life throughout the Ottoman centuries. Economically, Ottoman women were far from idle. They could inherit, own, and manage property independently of their male relatives. Court records show women buying and selling houses, shops, and agricultural land. They engaged in various trades and crafts, ran businesses, and lent money. In rural areas, women were essential to agricultural labor. Even within the legal framework, which was based on Islamic Sharia, women had rights to initiate divorce, testify in court, and protect their financial interests. While societal norms certainly shaped their opportunities, the image of complete economic dependence is misleading. The Ottoman harem and the roles of women within it were not static. They evolved significantly over the empire's long history, spanning some 600 years, from around 1300 CE. In the early centuries, the harem was smaller and less politically influential. However, as the empire grew in power and complexity, so too did the imperial household. The 16th and 17th centuries, often dubbed the Sultanate of Women, saw figures like Hürrem Sultan and Kösem Sultan wield extraordinary political authority, often acting as de facto rulers or regents. This period marked a peak in the direct political involvement of harem women in state affairs. Following the intense period of the Sultanate of Women, there were shifts in power dynamics. While the Valide Sultan generally retained significant status and influence, the direct political dominance of other harem women became less pronounced for a time. However, They continued to be important patrons of art, architecture and charity, and maintained their roles within the dynastic politics of the empire. The internal structure and educational aspects of the harem also continued, adapting to changing times. The institution remained a central part of the Ottoman court, symbolizing the Sultan's power and lineage until the very end of the empire.